Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, Pizzazz Your Presentations. My name is Jo. Hi. Before we start putting any presentations together, and what we'll have a look at this afternoon is thinking about your presentation and what the purpose of it is. So, is your presentation to inform? Is it to instruct? Is it to entertain? It's also important to know who your audience is, so if it's for colleagues, suppliers or creditors, and what type of presentation it's going to be. So is it going to contain fun or is it going to contain lots of facts and figures? Once you've got all this information, then you can start to pitch the content right, and you can also start to make the content appropriate. For example, you don't want to include lots of cartoon images if you're delivering your business plan to the bank, for example. Similarly, you don't want lots of facts and figures if you're delivering a presentation to children. Smart Style, we offer courses that expand on this, such as PowerPoint courses, and we also offer the softer skills courses that will help you design and plan the content of your presentation, structure it, and also give you those skills to stand up and deliver it. But the purpose of today's webinar is just to give you a taster of some of the features in PowerPoint that will help you build your presentations with a variety of content. So I'm going to start off by looking at a presentation that already exists. So I've got a presentation here, not many slides in it, but I do happen to know that there's some of the content that I want to put into this presentation that exists elsewhere. So I know that I've got some slides in another presentation that have some data that I need. I could open that presentation, so file open, find it, open it, copy the slides that I need from that presentation and paste them into this one. Alternatively, I can just click underneath the slide. So I want my new slides to go at the end of the presentation. That's where I want them to go, and I'm going to import them in directly. So we have this new slide. If you're used to using PowerPoint, that will be familiar to you. But from the drop down underneath new slide, I'm going to reuse slides from an existing presentation. That brings up the reuse slides task pane down the right hand side of the screen. There's links to open the presentation from a slide library if you've got one stored in SharePoint. You can just open a PowerPoint file that's stored on your desktop or on your computer network. And browse does exactly the same thing. So I'm going to browse to a file that I've already got, which is on my desktop in my PowerPoint folder. And the presentation that I'm going to pull the information into my presentation is from project planning. And down the right hand side of the screen, all the slides within that presentation are displayed. So you can see my presentation isn't very exciting at the moment. There's no theme assigned to it right now. The presentation that I'm pulling information in from does have a theme applied to it. What will happen is the theme that I've got will be applied to the slide, so it'll remove any of the backgrounds from those slides. So the ones that I would like to bring in, dependencies and resources. And I would also like to bring in a slide called timeline. Now, single clicking on a slide brings them in one at a time. You also have the option in this task pane to do a right click, so you can insert all slides. If you wanted all of them, just quickly copy them all over. You can apply the theme that's in the right hand side in the presentation that they're coming from to all of your slides, or just to the selected slides. But I've got what I need now from this particular presentation, so I'm going to close out of the reuse slides task pane. And there we go, it is effectively copying and pasting, but it's just a quick way of bringing your slides in from other presentations. A lot of presentations take their information from Word documents, and again, copy and pasting is absolutely fine. I have a Word document here that I've pre-populated. And this information, or the headline information from here, so I don't want all the text from here, I just want the headline information, because that's what PowerPoint's about, is just giving you that headline data. And I've specifically formatted this particular document with heading styles. So if I click on my heading Issues and Resolutions, I can see that that's being formatted with heading style number 1, as has Current Status, heading style number 1. A style is simply a collection of formats in Word. I know it's not a word course, but it's good to know what a style is. It's a collection of formats that you can quickly apply to so that you've got uniformity throughout the document. If you then modify the style, everything that uses that style throughout your document is updated in one go. So I've used heading 1 throughout my document. I've also used heading 2 for description, how it was resolved is a heading 2. Time is a heading 3. Cost is a heading 3. Other is also a heading 3. There's up to 9 heading styles that you can use in a Word document. Then I have some text that's just formatted as normal, so normal sort of like content for the document. What will happen when I bring this Word document into my presentation is PowerPoint will look at everything that's formatted as a heading 1, so heading 1 and a heading 1, and it will put that as the title for the slide that it brings it into. Anything that's a heading 2 will put that into the text box, and it'll put it as a level 1 bullet. Anything that's a heading 3 will be a sub-bullet, so that will become a level 2 bullet, and so on if you'd use different heading levels. So to get this information into PowerPoint without using copy and paste, you need to format the document with heading styles. I'm just going to save the changes to that document and close out of it. So this new document is going to come at the end of my presentation. So again, use the drop down arrow from new slide, and I'm going to bring in slides from outline. The word outline, outlining your text in heading styles, heading levels, or heading outlines. So I'm going to use slides from outline from my desktop in my PowerPoint folder. The document's called Status and Issues, and simply insert it. Give it a second or two, and you can see that anything that was a heading level 1 has come in and populated the title of the slide. Heading 2s come in as main bullets, heading 3s come in as sub-bullets, and then sub-bullets and so on for heading 4, 5, 6, right up to heading 9. Anything that was formatted as normal has not been brought into the presentation, but that's fine. The presentation should give you just the headline data and not all the text behind it. That's what the presenter's for. Because of the formatting in the Word document, we've got some blue text in here, it's not right, and I'm not particularly keen on the Times New Roman. So by simply selecting a slide, and in the slides group of commands, I can just reset it so these slides are the same as the rest of the presentation. So just reset it back to normal, so at least now they're falling with the other slides in my presentation. You can also bring information in, like I said, using cut, copy and paste, and I'm sure you've all used cut, copy and paste before. I have a little spreadsheet here, and I've got an existing chart in my spreadsheet, and I'd like to put that into my presentation. So in my presentation, I'm going to add a new slide with just a title, just using the title only layout, and give it a title. From the Excel spreadsheet, I've simply selected the chart, and I'm just going to copy it. Any form of copy will do. If you're used to using Control-C, that's absolutely fine. I'm back into my presentation. Now, there's different ways of pasting, and this is the same because it's a Microsoft program, whether it's from Word to Excel, Excel to PowerPoint, PowerPoint to Word, whatever it might be. This functionality that I'm going to show you now is the same across the board. So if I simply use the paste feature, the program that I'm pasting into says, okay, the nearest thing I've got to what you've just pasted is this. So if you're pasting from an Excel spreadsheet into a Word document, Word would go, I'll make it a table because that's the closest thing I've got. In PowerPoint, it is actually possible to insert a chart, and there's almost like mini apps within Microsoft programs. So both Excel and PowerPoint use the same mini app called Chart, so it looks exactly the same. But if I'd like to have functionality of Excel sitting behind my chart, if I copy the chart again, and this time I'm going to, on the Home tab, use Paste Special, and I'm going to paste it as a Microsoft Excel chart object, so it's got the functionality of Excel that sits behind it. slightly different how it's brought the data in, because you can put charts into PowerPoint. If I click on the one that I just pasted, on the ribbon I get specific chart tools and I can customize it straight away from here. The second one that I said paste it as an Excel object, it's pasted it just like a shape, but I can double click on the chart and then I get the functionality of Excel in front of me, and I can use it to update the data. Ooh, if it wasn't on a bit of a go slow. So I can use it to update the data at any time. However, should the figures, because I just did a paste special as an object, should the figures in my spreadsheet change, this won't. So I can see there we've got a figure of 750. If I change that figure in Excel, the Excel chart changes to 1000. The PowerPoint presentation doesn't. Okay, that's really not what I wanted. I'm going to delete that chart, because what I actually wanted is, if the spreadsheet changes, I want my presentation to change as well. I update the spreadsheet on a daily basis, but I look at this presentation once in a blue moon. So finally, in Excel, I'm going to copy the chart one last time. In my PowerPoint presentation, I'm going to use Paste Special again, but this time I'm going to do a paste link and paste the chart in as a Microsoft Excel object with a link back to its original data source. So again, it's pasted in as an object, but if the figures now change in Excel, so that 1000, I'm going to change it again to 9000. So the green section, quite big now, and it's reflected straight away in my PowerPoint presentation. And by the same merit, if I was working in the PowerPoint presentation and needed to change the figures, simply double click on the object. The spreadsheet will open and you can go and change the figures as you wish. If the spreadsheet, I had the spreadsheet open then, but if the spreadsheet wasn't open, the link, I can just right hand click on here, the object knows it's a linked object, it knows where it's got the data from. So even if the spreadsheet wasn't open, double clicking on the object within PowerPoint would go and get the chart for me. So have a think about that if you've got data already. So that's copy and either paste it, the best thing it can think of, paste it as an object so you get the functionality within a different application, or link it back into the original data source. So now we've got some context in our presentation. It's still not looking pizzazzy, which is what I promised you. Let's see what other content we can include. If you're inserting images, by the way, make sure that they're appropriate. My slide doesn't look very much like it's got much other than the charts that I've just put in, anything interesting to have a look at. And slide number 2 is quite left heavy with the text that I'm going in to put in here. So I'm going to include an image. If I click on the text box, it's one big placeholder, and I want to make sure that the balance is right. So text at the left, image at the right. So I'm just going to simply not add a new slide in. I'm going to change the layout of this one so it's set up so that it can hold 2 contents of data, 2 different elements of data. So the image is going to go at the right, and I can simply click on any of these icons within the placeholder to add videos, tables, charts, smart art graphics. I want to put a picture in there, and from my PowerPoint folder, I'll put the project image in. Perfect. Again, be careful about copyrights, depending on who you're giving your presentation to. So just sort of like thinking about the theory about PowerPoint, it's very much like fuzzy felts. I don't know if you had fuzzy felts when you were a childhood toy. They were great. So you had a fuzzy background with lots of felt objects and you put them on. So almost the same in PowerPoint. Your slide is like your background and you put objects in there to create that bigger picture. Each object that you put into PowerPoint has its own special tool, so they're all individual objects. If I click on a text box, for example, I can see on the ribbon that I get additional drawing tools so that I can format my text box. If I click on the picture, I get picture tools so I can format the picture. So it always gives me the tools that I need at any one time. And you can quickly add interest to the picture then by simply applying some of the predefined formats that Microsoft give you. So from here, I would like to, I don't know, maybe have a look at some of the borders that I can apply to the picture. And the live preview, as they call it, shows me what it's going to look like before I make my selection. So I'm going to go for a reflected rounded rectangle shape. Perfect. So that looks better already just by doing a quick click. In addition to the picture styles that you can apply, you can then apply different effects. So this one has a reflection on it. So if I have a look at the picture effects, I could maybe adjust that reflection to make it a little bit clearer. Oh, that's a bit better. You can add borders to your picture and change the layout of your picture too. Artistic effects depends on the picture really as to whether these will be appropriate or not. So that's supposed to make it look like it's a photocopy, or to make it look like it's got glow edges on it. Let's go for that one. So please don't worry about having to go around with these options at the top of your screen. Any of these settings, if you make a mess, you can always just press reset picture and it's back to how it was when you first inserted it. And then by that point, after you've had a go at trying various different options, you should have an understanding of which one might look best for you. Okay. So other things that you can do in your presentation. I'm going to go to the timelines slide in my presentation. This is the one that I brought in from another presentation. And you do often find in presentations that you have bullet points of text, which is fine. They're informative. They tell people what they need to know, but it looks a little bit dull. I need to have that text, but I want to add a little bit more interest to it. And I'm not very artistically minded, so I'm just going to highlight the text and see what would happen if I converted it into a smart art graphic. So there's a whole load of graphics here, and again, just by hovering over them, you can see what's what and have a look at maybe those ones are going to be relevant to your presentation and the text that you've got selected. You can always go and have a look at more smart art graphics, so if that wasn't quite right, what type of graphic is it you're wanting? So I'm wanting a process. Oh, that looks quite nice. And arrow up and OK. So exactly the same text as it was before, it's just adding a little bit of interest to it. And then you can add animation to it as well later. So by clicking on the object, just like the other objects that we were talking about, I now get Smart Art Tools, Design and Format. So there's some predefined styles in here. Again, just by hovering over them, you get the live preview. You can change the colour quickly of your object. And if the style that you chose wasn't quite right, again, you can just simply hover over until you get the one that you need. I think I'm going to go for the down arrow instead of the up arrow. The text at the left, you could use that if you wanted to add text to your graphic. And it will update automatically. You can either expand that out, collapse it, or use the ribbon to add shapes and bullets and bring your text box back. So that was simply just converting things into smart art graphics. The text that you have might look slightly different depending on what you're working with. So issues and resolutions that we've got here, convert it into a smart art graphic. Which one shall I go? We'll do for now. Okay. So adding a little bit of interest with pictures, with charts, with shapes, with smart art graphics, it can just improve the presentation and make it a little easier to watch, I suppose, from an audience point of view. So now that we've got some content, it looks a little bit more interesting. We can start thinking about the overall appearance of the whole presentation. So PowerPoint as an application provides a number of predefined themes that you can apply directly from the ribbon tab. Once you've chosen the theme that you like, you can then apply different variants to the colours, the fonts, special effects, background styles, all of that in your presentation. I'm just going to go to slide number 1. You don't have to go to slide number 1 to do this, by the way. I'm just going to move to slide number 1. Have a go at having a look at some of the themes to see a live preview. Oh, don't like that one. Of how these different themes will look on your presentation. Quite like that one. Clicking on a theme then applies it to all the slides in your presentation. Again, you can do a right click and apply it to the selected slides if you have more than one selected, but by default it will apply it to all slides in your presentation. It creates that uniformity throughout. Once you've got a theme you like, then you can simply use the variants. So we've got variations in colours. Quite like the pinky one. You can also go for variations in fonts. So I think we'll go for Calibri. You can go for variations. Let me just select slide number 4 here. Variations in effects. So I'll go for a riplet. Gives a kind of a glow effect to it. And also background styles. Ooh. No, I don't think I like any of those. I'll leave it as it is. Didn't take 2 minutes, and it's added a whole different impact to the presentation and updated everything in the presentation, including the graphics that we've got, which now shows us that particular smart art graphic isn't right. We maybe need to change it and maybe resize it. If you've spent some time looking at your theme, so we started off with a blue one with a different font and a different background. If you know that you're going to use this same theme over and over again in this presentation and maybe other presentations, then just save it as a template and you can use it over and over again. So by having a look at the more options on themes, I'm just going to save the current theme. And now that appears on my ribbon for this presentation, and for future presentations, I can just simply click on it and here, presto, it's done. You should do that for your corporate ones. So here's one that we have for ITS group. Simply clicking on it will apply the ITS group theme to the presentation, or back to the one that I've just created. You do see themes in other applications. So in Word, for example, you'll have colour schemes, and that theme will be throughout the whole of Microsoft Office now. Excuse me. So I like the theme, but I'd like our corporate logo, I think, in the top left corner of my slides. I could put the logo in on one slide and copy and paste it onto all the other slides. But I do want to make sure, just from a quality and consistent point of view, that the logo is in exactly the same place on each slide, so people can't move it accidentally and they can't delete it accidentally. All the work that I've gone through this afternoon so far has been in the foreground of PowerPoint. What I would like to do now is have a look at the master, slide master. Now, masters in PowerPoint are almost like transparencies that sit behind your slides. They sit in a different view of the presentation. But before we have a look at those masters, I suppose it's important to understand, or just to reflect on the fact that when you add a new style, PowerPoint gives various different layouts. So you can have title and content, section, comparison to content, just a blank slide. And each one of these layouts has its own master. Then there's an overarching master that affects all of them. So it's probably the master that I want to affect, but it's important that you understand those. So I'm going to go to the master now and put our corporate logo in. So I want to change the view. I want to change the way I'm looking at my presentation. And I need to have a look at the slide master. So from those layouts that I was pointing to, you can see each one of them here has their own master. The to content one and so on. The big one, the very top one, is your master. So if you wanted to affect all the ones below it, almost like a tree effect, parent and child effect, then make the changes to the overall master. So that's the one I'm going to change. and I'm going to simply insert a picture, which is in my PowerPoint folder, Smart Style logo, and I just want it quite small in the top left corner of the slide. And I don't know if you can see that's added it to the various different layouts within this presentation that sit below it. That's exactly what I wanted it to do. I'm now going to close out of master view. So that logo now appears on all the slides in the presentation. It's in the same place. I can't click on it. The object doesn't appear in the foreground. It's sat in the master behind the slide. If I wanted to change it, move it, delete it, I would have to go back into the master and edit it that way. There's certain slides, if I just scroll up to the top of my presentation, so it hasn't put, the master hasn't put it on the title slides. Title slides often have a different appearance, purely and simply, so that the audience knows that the subject is changing. So on the master slide, on the title slide, I'm going to go back into slide master. I'm going to insert a picture. And let's say on this particular slide, I'm going to put it in the top right hand corner, just to be daring. Go back to close out of master view or change the view back to normal. And now we have our logo on the master slide. Any slide that I put in using a master, so if I'm going to change the subject, will all look the same. So we're getting there now, starting to look a little bit more like a presentation. When you're working in PowerPoint, you have what are called transition effects, and depending on like the themes that you've applied and any background effects on your presentation, a transition effect changes the way that one slide disappears off the screen and the next one comes on, but only when you're running a slideshow. You can tell if you've got a transition effect applied to your slide because of the little star that's underneath the slide number. So if you wanted to try the animation, you can simply click to try it. You don't have to have the ones that are built in. You just need to make sure you've got the one that's particularly appropriate to you. So let's have a look at what we have on our transitions tab. So we have wipe, and it shows you a sample of how that's going to look. Some are better than others. So I'm just going to go for uncover, quite like that one. Whichever transition effect that you've found, you then have additional effects. So I've got effect options here, and I can have that uncovering from the left, top, bottom, right, from a corner. It's up to you whichever one you go for. You can apply sound to that as well. So if you wanted it cheesy with a clapping sound every time a new slide came on, that's great. And you can choose the duration of the transition. You can have different transition effects on different slides. So slide number 1 has blind, slide number 2 has uncover, slide number 3 has fade. I really wouldn't advise you to do that. It just looks like you've been playing around with PowerPoint. Have that uniformity, have the same transition effects all through your presentation. So now that I've got slide number 2 as I like it, uncover from the bottom, from the right, I'm going to apply to all. So now any slide that I click on has got the uncover transition effect. I suppose the only exception to that rule is maybe your title slides, maybe choose a different one, just so that people know that the subject is changing, or maybe even the speaker is changing. To see the overall effect, I'm going to run the slideshow. Just a little keyboard shortcut for you. You have keys across the top of your keyboard. If you want to run your slideshow from slide number 1, F5. And you can run through your slideshow. And at any time, escape to end it. Okay. So transitions, where transitions affect all objects, the slide as a whole, how the whole slide comes on or how the whole slide goes off. Animations are applied to the objects on the slide. So when you have objects on a slide, such as our gentleman on slide number 2, we could apply an animation effect to make him come into the presentation, or we can emphasize this picture when I'm running the presentation, or I can have an exit effect on the image, or even a motion effect to make him move around the slide. Or you can do all of that, although that's a little bit much. And remember, for each of the animations, you're probably going to have to click, so you'll have endlessly clicking when you're presenting. So not too much animation, but just to make it interesting. Getting the balance right can be a bit tricky. So I'm going to go to our, where are we? So we have a text box here on our current status. So when the text comes in, I'd just like it to drop out of the sky, if you like. So I'm going to go to animations. I've already clicked on the text box, and you can have a look at some of the animations that are available. So I'd like it to fly in. It's coming from the bottom. I'd like it to come from the bottom left. And there we go. So we have an animation effect on there. Your animations, your ribbon up at the top of your screen, the entrance animations are in green. The emphasis ones are in amber, and the exit ones are in red. And as I mentioned, you can have all of those things. So if I highlight our images, I would like him to wheel in. And then I would like to emphasize that by spinning. And then I would like to be able to click to make this disappear, so we'll get it to wheel out as well. Each effect that you put on your object will be replaced unless you're using the animation pane. So I'm going to remove this content. Oops. Add animation. So I'm going to wheel in. So that's my first animation. I would like to spin. Second animation in amber. And the third one, to disappear, will wheel out again. Okay, and I can see that there's 3 animation objects on there. So let's have a look at how that looks in the slideshow. So F5, remember, was the key to run the slide from slide 1. Shift and F5 will run the slideshow from the current slide. So remember what I was saying about the amount of clicks. So in order to make this come on, a simple click, and then to emphasize, another click, and then to make it go off, yet another click. You can automate those, but you do need to make sure that you've changed the animation appropriately. So again, on slide number 3, I'm just going to have this to float in, which is fine, but it seems to be floating in all on one object. And what I'd like to happen is, I'd like the main bullet to come in, and then talk about the project, and then I want to talk about vendors before I see manufacturing, talk about that before I see sales. So I've already chosen the animation, I've got the effect, and I would like to start these on click. And I don't know if you notice, number 1, number 1, number 1 are all going to come in now as individual options. So Shift and F5 to run it. So I can talk all I want about dependencies and resources. Only when I click does the main bullet come in. So talk about the project. When I'm ready, click to talk about the vendors. When I'm ready, click to talk about manufacturing, and so on and so forth. And it just gives you that flexibility. If you think back to school, the headmaster used to do that in assembly with a piece of paper over the acetate on the overhead projector. It's exactly the same thing, just a little bit more efficient. Obviously, we cover things like animation in a lot more detail on our course. So we're kind of getting there now. It's almost done is the presentation. A few tweaks to it. Before you run your presentation, you really ought to time it. Sometimes when you delivering a presentation, you're automatically given time constraints anyway. Like if you're going for an interview, they might say you've got 10 minutes to talk about pens or whatever it might be. Or for a training session, for example, it needs to last 45 minutes or however long it might be. So it's a really good idea to test it. Even if you've got no constraints on time and you can go on for as long as you want, you ought to know how long your presentation is going to take. So you can advise your audience at the beginning, because they want to know, am I going to be sat here 5 hours or 5 minutes? So to rehearse it, this is the overall slideshow now. So I'm going to have a look at the slideshow tab and I'm going to rehearse my timings. So what this does is it will display your presentation, so it's actually running through your presentation, and you can see there's a little recording your timings in the top left corner. As you type and click, then obviously it's timing the next slide, or you can click to go on. If you needed to pause it, you can do, and then resume when you're ready. When you're using this rehearsal tool, my advice would be, get yourself preferably in the room where you're going to be delivering the presentation, and stand up, because when you sit down behind it, you're like, oh, project is about define goal, define scope, and you run through it too quickly. But when you're actually delivering the presentation, it will take a whole load longer. So I'm just going to click through this to get to the end of the presentation. Okay, so here we are. The total time for your slideshow was 48 seconds. So hopefully it would say something like 9 minutes and 30 seconds. So for a 10-minute presentation, that's quite good. I do want to keep those timings. And if I display my presentation then in slide sorter view, I can see underneath each slide how long they're going to take. So the first slide in my presentation says, on this instance, it's going to take 9 seconds. And it doesn't seem very long at all. And in actual fact, I've got a few questions and some handouts to give at that point in time. So I know it's probably going to take me nearer 45 seconds. So if I go to the transitions tab, I can simply change that to 45 seconds. And now that, see how long that particular slide will last. It can be quite dangerous having your slides coming on after a certain amount of seconds, because simply a cough or a sneeze can throw you out a couple of seconds and then you're speaking faster to catch up. So you can have it on mouse click or after. But if you want to remove your timings, I'm going to use my shift key. I've got the first slide selected, shift and click on the last one, and I'm just going to get rid of the tick in after to get rid of those timings. Try again until I get my my timings right. When it comes to presenting, before you actually start your slideshow, so I always do this before I start a webinar just to make sure things happen. I've got 2 screens and I need to make sure that the presentation comes up in the screen that you can see and not the other one. So again, setting up the whole slideshow. If I go into the setup show option, I can make sure first of all whether the slides are going to advance manually or using the timings. Is the presentation going to show on this monitor or the other monitor, so the primary monitor or the other one? What resolution do I want? So the current one's fine. And do I want to use presenter view? Yes or no? Now I can't show you presenter view when I'm presenting in a webinar, but I can show you a picture of what it looks like. The options that you have in the setup show dialog box, if I click OK, you have similar ones in here as well. So do you want to play narrations? Do you want to use the timings, show media, what monitor you're running it on? Do you want to use presenter view? So the benefits of using presenter view, let me show you this image. This is what it looks like. So this is just a screenshot of the image. So what would happen on the primary monitor is the audience see the slides, and on your other monitor you get this presenter view. So you can see the slide that's currently displayed to your audience, and you can see what's coming next. You can also see for this slide the text that you want to read. So this is a prompt, this is what you're going to be talking about. You can use the navigation buttons as well as clicking. You don't have to use those. In display settings, you could switch that round if you've got your monitor wrong. And when you're done, end the slideshow, and a couple of other tools to magnify and more options. So that's what presenter view looks like. So it's great if you've got two screens, you can prepare for your presentation. So we're kind of good to go now. The one last thing that I'm going to show you, which drives me nuts, when people are working on presentations, and I've seen this before, I'm going to save my changes. I've seen this before actually on in a massive room, couple of hundred people there, on the screen. Somebody came up, this was on the desktop, they double clicked on the icon on the desktop to open the window, they found the presentation, they double clicked on the presentation to open it, they came in here and was looking for run it from the beginning, that's what I want to do, and it was just cringy. So let me escape out of that. Ideally what you want is, and if this was on the desktop, simply double click. That's it. You don't need to see the gubbins of PowerPoint and the ribbon and the navigation down the left. You don't need to see all of that. All you want is to simply double click and it to run. So I've got two quiz show files here. This one's the presentation and this is what's called the PowerPoint show. So in order to get yourself a PowerPoint show, File, Save As, Browse, Project Overview, and call it a PowerPoint show. Perfect. I'm going to close out this presentation. And let's, for argument's sake, say that was on our desktop. Clear up your desktop first, obviously. Double click and you're straight into the show. No gubbins of PowerPoint at all going on around you. And it's great to email that through as well. Just one thing to remember is that you now have two files. You have the PowerPoint file and you have the PowerPoint show. Changing the PowerPoint file will not change the show. So any changes you make to the PowerPoint file, make sure you overwrite this one as well. And I hope that gives you like a little bit of an overview on PowerPoint of things that you can include to make your presentation a little bit more interesting. I know it's only a 45-minute webinar and I'm trying to cram in as much as I can to give you a good taster of what you can do in PowerPoint. But like I say, we have other courses that we run for both the soft skills and for the IT skills. But before we go, have you got any questions for me? If you want to use the chat panel at the right-hand side of your screen and just ask away if you've got any questions. If there's anything you want me to go over. No questions? Okay, are you sure? In that case, it's just left for me to say thank you very much for coming, and thank you if you've attended the series of webinars this week. I hope you all have a lovely weekend and stay safe. But please do email me if there's anything you need to know. Use our website if you want to go and have a look at the recordings from previous webinars. They're all there for you to view, and book on future ones. They've proved a little bit more popular than we gave them credit for, so these ones will be running again next week, but we're planning more for the weeks to come, so watch this space. But we will be in touch with you, and if you wouldn't mind just spending a minute or two, just 1 minute, just filling in the evaluation form at the end of this webinar, it would be great. So thank you, bye, have a lovely weekend.